The Hagmann Hagmann Report for today. It is February 9th, 2015. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio with my son, fellow investigator, fellow researcher, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together, in such a minefield it is. For new listeners, I want to say hello to certain people. I got a letter from Central America and South America today, both. I want to say hello to the listeners there. I'm not going to mention who you are. Well, you know who you are. And you know why I'm not going to mention. But anyway, welcome. Thanks for listening.
Special hello to a listener in Denmark.
In Denmark, yeah.
That's somebody we received an email from this weekend and wanted to thank for sharing their listening all the way out there.
And we have one from Australia as well. Got that on Sunday. So, man, all over the place. Welcome and thank you for tuning us in. Our home base on the internet is HagmannandHagmann.com, and for new listeners, we broadcast live every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, our archives are now updated. If you click on past shows, you can take your selection there, and also on SoundCloud. And if you look at the top of our website, you've got multiple options to listen and download. So we're very happy that that's gotten done, and I want to say thank you so much for your patience. And tonight is going to be just a terrific night of news and information. We are going to touch on some university subjects. I do want to mention that portions of tonight's broadcast, so proud, I mean absolutely so proud to have on board with us proflowers.com. That's proflowers.com. Gentlemen, Valentine's Day is just 5 days away. It's the 9th day of February already. And, folks, let me tell you something. ProFlowers makes it so easy to impress that special person in your life, whether it's a special female, special male, mom, a dad, a brother, sister, coworker, you name it. ProFlowers will deliver, literally. ProFlowers, one of our favorite place for flowers. Absolutely our favorite place for flowers. And I think I'm on day like 15 of flowers I got my wife that are still just so gorgeous on the counter. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know how they grow them, but I'll tell you, I had a neighbor come in Saturday and complimented my wife, thinking that she just got them that day or the previous day. And no, it's and we shared, of course, ProFlowers. So proflowers.com, folks. When you go there, look in the upper right-hand corner of the website. There, click on the box and type in Hagmann. That'll take you to our special page. And on that page, you can pick out all sorts of things that are exclusive to our listeners. You click on the blue microphone box and type in Hagmann, Hagmann, and that's just for you, just for the listeners. And with that, Joe, we got a great show planned for you tonight. Now, we're getting reports, and you mentioned this earlier. We're trying to track this information down about an explosion, perhaps, in Ukraine. I don't know.
Yesterday in the studio email, Chris with a K sent us a email in regards to the subject. Also, it reads as follows: tactical nuke is the subject. I'm not sure if a hoax or not. Several different websites have tactical nuke and mushroom cloud. Husband is a vet and has been looking through some videos. And anyways, it goes on to say that from their personal perspective, that they aren't sure. Right, but they said the windows, some of the things that from the pictures, let me tell you, we did have pictures fall off the walls in our house, and windows they're explaining, living close to a firing range near Fort Bragg, and when artillery would go off there, how it would affect their house. And some of the different reports we've looked at, it does show a big mushroom cloud or a big explosion. Some say an arms depot, a rebel arms depot was hit. Some say that it was a tactical nuke. And there are lots of reports out there, but we do have to get to the bottom of this. But we have to go through the information, I guess, and find out ourselves whether, based on, if you remember the Syria explosion that happened.
That's right. Yep.
You received intel about that being a tactical nuke.
Well, let me clarify that, or make this very, very clear. When I say tactical nuclear weapon, there are nuclear weapons that I suppose would fall into the tactical range that that people don't know about. The mainstream public don't know about, that leave very little signature. It just, so we don't know. We don't know, but the information that I got at the time, in fact, twice, 2 different times in Syria by Israel, there were very specialized nuclear type weapons. Now, this will be poo-pooed by the media and of course anyone else, but don't forget, we've got technology, weaponry that the general public has no clue. That we're so far ahead. So just understand that you could say, well, wait a minute, this would leave a certain signature or cause this or cause that, or we'd be able to tell,
there's so much that can be, that we don't know about, that exists, from weaponry to different types of technological weapons, sound weapons, non-lethal weapons, that we don't know all the abilities, capabilities, technological abilities to create a explosion with maybe something completely new, separate from a nuclear device, but separate from what the old ways of blowing things up were also. So we have to look at things very closely and be very careful before stating to know one way or the other what was carried out. We can tell you this much: an explosion happened.
Well, something went bang.
Something did go bang. And the real question now is what went bang and how it happened. Was it something as simple as a munitions depot that sparked an explosion? Was it struck and made to explode, or was it, as some are claiming, a tactical nuke? But up to this point, I heard on the local news tonight, or national news, 5,300 people have died in Ukraine since the beginning of the fighting between the Ukrainian people and the pro-Russian separatists. 5,300, which is a sizable amount, considering that this was a country not in turmoil 2 years ago. How this issue popped up really out of nowhere, and it is one other indicator in another part of the country, as we have many indicators, whether it's the Japan versus China island disputes, whether it's the North Korea versus the rest of the world, or South Korea dispute, whether it's the Federal Reserve versus the people of the United States, whether it's the United States government and their overthrowing of leaders in the Middle East and creating uprisings and religious conflicts in the Middle East. War, famine, death, destruction is surrounding us, from stemming from economic issues to territorial disputes to ideological issues. There's no shortage of conflicts, and there's no shortage of variations of why these conflicts are ongoing and will continue to be ongoing. There's a reason why things continue to heat up in the Middle East, why things continue to get worse in these countries in the Middle East and not better. There's a reason that our economy continues to decline, our debt continues to increase, yet they say that our recovery has never been better. They are carrying out an agenda that has been in the planning for ages, since the first civilization of the world, since the land of Canaan and the beginning of the land of Israel.
Right.
Since the Garden of Eden, where Cain killed his brother Abel, there has been conflict. The conflict has stemmed from Satan, or the devil, as the Bible describes. Adam and Eve lived in the Garden of Eden with their Lord, with God who created them, and their sin or their fall was the beginning of conflict, was the beginning of toil for humankind on this earth. And even when Jesus came, when God came in the flesh, died for all sins of man, to be resurrected and fulfill what his Father's will was, and then until now, are waiting for his return to rectify all the wrongs, to avenge all the blood, and to stop all the oppression that we have seen, are seeing, and will see, and continue to see until this comes to its conclusion.
Right. Keep going, brother. You got it.
Well, we see through our observations from past, from reading in the Bible, the never-ending fight between good and evil, the ways in which the evil manifests, how it manifests through people, and how the people of God have been subjected to this evil, how they've resisted, how they've fought it, how they've been subject to death because of it. And it has laid a foundation, which we have the Holy Bible in our present world today, where is 1,000 years ago, it was a crime to be able to read. The knowledge was kept secret, only for few to interpret it to the masses. We've had a new nation, a new continent arise and become the superpower of the world, that being that of America, from the year 1500 to today, in the last 500 years. There's been a huge shift in geopolitical, the way the world is. We've had a huge increase of what the end times, from Revelation to what the Lord said in the end of the Gospels would happen. There would be wars from kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation, ethnos against ethnos, as Paul McGuire would say. Earthquakes in diverse places. The world heating up, from storms getting worse to each catastrophe we see, whether it is natural, man-made, or economic to political, becoming more and more intense. We feel the spiritual battle increasing. We see how the Lord is moving his pieces in position where he needs them. His soldiers in his army are becoming more devoted to the Lord, or they are those who are not part of the Lord, who are secular or otherwise, are moving further into insanity. The society, how it is being manipulated and really shaped by these Luciferians, these evil elites, through programming from the TV to the music to entertainment, from the Super Bowl to the Grammys, as two recent examples. And we see how the worship of Satan has now become the number one, the number one religious ceremonial ritual, right, that is broadcast on our TVs, on our radio stations, without shame, without it being hidden or without it being veiled. They're outright doing it in the open. No qualms about it. Not caring what people think or say, or thinking that the people are too stupid to understand what's happening in front of their eyes.
Exactly. Now, if I can kind of step in here, too, because last Monday. Yeah, last Monday we had talked about, and of course this is the introduction to our Hagmann Hagmann University of Conspiracy Fact and History. But before I get into this, I also want to mention too, tomorrow night Steve Quayle and Hawk will be on with us. Tomorrow night, Steve Quayle and Hawk, basically talking about all the warnings that have been made. Now, what do we do essentially? What do we do? How many more warnings can we give? What's coming? What should we do as Christians, and of course as people concerned about making it through, pushing forward well beyond the collapse and well beyond whatever is coming our way. And so that's going to be a great show. Steve Quayle and Hawk tomorrow night. I just want to bring that. Stan Dale will not be with us tomorrow night. It's his birthday, and he's going to take the night off.
70th birthday.
Yeah, so he's going to take the night off. That's great.
Take the time and send him an email.
Yeah, just wish him a happy birthday.
Yeah, let him know how much he's appreciated. I
totally agree. Yep. And, yeah, absolutely. But last week we were talking about Satanism a little bit. And Satanism really is the root of, when we look at the New World Order, look at all the things that are taking place. Satanism is, in fact, really at the root of everything. And because the One World Order is satanic agenda driven, and sort of the groundwork for what we're going to be talking about in our studies from now on is you got to understand the Satan aspect of this. And we had talked last week, just for a brief recap, we had talked last week about a number of things. In fact, a lot of this comes from Russ Dizdar, and I cannot think of a better expert than Russ on the matters of Satanism. And I've had the opportunity to work with Russ with satanic crimes and of late, and I got to tell you, he is it's amazing. Last week we had established that the United States and really the world is in decline. It's in spiritual decline because of Satanism, really, or because of the dark forces, the supernatural, the sophisticated secrecy behind the dark forces. It's estimated there are 100 million people involved in Satanism. And again, we went over this last week, just really briefly. There are really three major laws of Satanism, I suppose, or the satanic. The law of physical success, the law of supernatural secrecy, and to instill the concept of fear. They want to scare you, okay? The Satanists want to scare you. So you can go back and listen to last Monday's show. And then we talked about the ritualistic abuse of animals and humans, and we also talked about the people behind this. The perpetrators believe that they're going to receive some dark spiritual powers and also physical pleasure and powers from their acts. And we mentioned, and I'll have this done here shortly. It's just been one of those amazing weekends and weeks. But there are 5 laws about the satanic and about the globalists and about the Luciferians that you need to know very briefly and very quickly. Again, we went over this last week. And it's number 1, and perhaps the most important one. It's not what you believe that matters. It's what they believe. That's a huge one, and that really comes into play in all aspects of everything. And since the fall of man, or since the beginning of man, history is full of satanic rituals, accounts of satanic rituals, historic accounts of them, and historic artifacts of them, human and animal sacrifice evident. The third is there is a major cultural impact of Satanism. And number 4, the Satanism and all of the globalist movement or the New World Order. When we talk about this, please understand that it's all spiritually motivated. It's all satanically motivated. There is not any shred of decency in that whatsoever, in the New World Order or the thrust of the New World Order. And number 5, in order to understand everything, in order to understand what we're talking about, we need to seek and obtain deep spiritual insight and wisdom from God. That's needed. So, and again, last week we talked about that. The types of Satanism. Again, we talked about that as well. The dabbler, somebody who just kind of dabbles in satanic kind of stuff, opening the door for demonization. This is really important to understand because the different levels allow you to understand, to take a look at a situation and to assess, to do like mental triage on a situation. The second one is a self-styled Satanist. It's kind of a hybrid from a dabbler to the third kind, which is a psycho-Satanist. People that seem crazy, but seem like monsters, for example, but they're not. Then you've got popular Satanism. You can see Temple of Set people, Michael Aquino, the Church of Satan, of course. Number 5 is the traditional Satanism. And there you have Anton LaVey. You've got the Cathedral of the Black Goat. You've got the ceremonies of robes and such. So that's identifiable there. They really, the rituals there open the door to demons. And number 6, that's the occult variety, the garden variety of occult, like voodoo and hoodoo and Santeria and so on. And that's another part of Satanism. So last week we kind of set that stage. And I just want to mention this. Again, referencing Russ Dizdar, because he gets into this in his book, The Black Awakening, in his courses, in his talks. Bible prophecy is something that we talk a lot about. Now, Russ, in his book, The Black Awakening, it talks about this as well. Whenever we and he and others talk about Bible prophecy, there are certain revelations about Bible prophecy that I think everyone should know and should be standardized. And number 1, all Bible prophecy was initiated by God to the whole, or God, I'm sorry, it was all initiated by God. Bible prophecy was. Every writer of Scripture really was infused by the Holy Spirit. They knew they were led by the Spirit of God, and they never claimed it was their human ability that guided them. They knew it was a higher force. But it's important to understand that Scripture, Bible prophecy, by God, through the Holy Spirit, into man. And I mean, that's so important. And Corinthians 2 talks about this. But anyway, the Bible prophecy can be researched. It talks about, it talks about a number of things, but it was given to those who really know God, who decided to study and are studying the Bible very seriously. It was given to those who know God on a personal level. You're going to find Bible prophecy understood by those who are saved. The fellowship, personal fellowship, is so important. Bible prophecy also is always accurate. And it's going to continue to show this pure accuracy. There's no ambiguity. There's misunderstanding or lack of understanding, but there's absolutely no ambiguity in Bible prophecy. You can't be a prophet and be wrong in prophecy. And for the record, Joe and I never claimed to be prophets, never would be. Heck, we don't even claim to be talk show hosts. So, but you can see. I mean, if you go to the New Testament, look in the book of Matthew, there in other books, the predictive words of Jesus, for example, in Matthew 24, they're quoted the world over. He gave, in that Matthew 24, you'll note for those who know the Bible, or if you want to grab a Bible, or you just write this down for later, Matthew 24, he gave a panoramic view of the very end of days. Check that out compared to today. You're seeing where what he predicted or prophesied, not predicted necessarily, but prophesied, talked about, is being fulfilled with historical accuracy right in front of us today. And there's so much that's right around the corner of our coming history. Now, just a word to the people who continue to call this fear porn. You know, Jeremiah chapter 6, he talks about watchmen. And in my view, folks, being a watchman, look, if you look at chapter 6 of the book of Jeremiah,
okay,
that was a dramatic pause. If you look at Jeremiah, look at all of the watchmen out there, the true watchmen. You'll hear them say, like we do, man, we don't want the job. We don't want to be watchmen. I certainly don't want that responsibility, because, you see, judgment will be harsh on those who don't do their jobs well. It's almost as if, you know, if you're in a family situation, and the older people out there will know, for example, if you're my age, if you were younger and had siblings, I didn't have any siblings, but if you are my age, you know, if let's say you're put in charge of younger children, if something happened or the younger children acted up, you got in trouble because you know better. Yeah, sure, they might have got in trouble. They might have got punished, but you got punished worse because you know better.
In Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 10, it says, "To whom shall I speak and give warning, that they may hear? Behold, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot hearken. Behold, the word of the Lord is unto them a reproach, and they have no delight in it. Therefore I am full of the fury of the Lord. I am weary with holding in. I will pour out upon the children abroad, and upon the assembly of young men together, for even the husband with the wife shall be taken, the aged with him that is full of days. Their houses shall be turned unto others, with their fields and wives together, for I shall stretch out my hand upon the inhabitants of the land, saith the Lord."
Okay.
"For from the least of them unto the greatest of every one is given into covetousness, and from the prophet even unto the priest every one dealeth falsely. They have healed also the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, saying, Peace, peace, when there is no peace."
And is that not what you know when?
And it goes on. "Where are they ashamed, when they had committed their abominations? Nay, they were not ashamed at all, neither could they blush. Therefore they shall fall among them that fall. At that time that I visit them, they shall be cast down, saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls.
Right.
But they said, we will not walk therein. Also I set watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the trumpet. But they say, we will not hearken. Therefore hear ye nations, and know, O congregation, what is among them. Hear, O earth, behold, I will bring evil upon this people, even the fruit of their thoughts, because they have not hearkened unto my words, nor my law, but have rejected it.
Well, okay, we'll stop right there for a second, okay? So, but what's the message here? I mean, we're reading the old King James Version, but what's the message? In other words, do your job, or you're going to get punished.
Hearken to the Lord's word,
right?
Or you are going to reap what you sow.
Well, you're going to suffer consequences. So yeah, I mean, we and it just certain things I read, it I just wonder where people, are coming from. But, we, and I know Steve does this, and Rick Wiles and Pastor Langford and others, we approach our positions as watchmen with a great deal of sobriety and solemnity. It's required. It really is. And we understand that it's our charge. It's we didn't ask for it necessarily. We were placed in this position, I believe, and we have to accept it. We have to play our positions, don't we? That we have to provide accurate and scripturally sound information and doctrine to those who seek it, and that's it, plain and simple. End of story. And it's through this obedience and willingness that God is using us as vessels, using all avenues and venues through us. So,
the term watchman, if I can, I don't like that term.
I don't either.
As being applied to me. I see it as a term being applied to any Bible reading believer who is sharing the truth of Jesus Christ and His message of salvation with another person.
That can also include current events as they relate to biblical prophecy. I think that could expand into the term of watchman.
The point being is that we are nothing special. We are not anything to be held up by men. All men who are believers in Christ have the same duties and are called to do so in a way that is personal between them and the Lord. And He shows them how they should walk out their faith and do so in a way that is sharing and uplifting the good news of Christ with others. And in our circumstance, in our situation, this radio show became the platform for us to be able to do it.
And it's through
given to us,
our listeners. Well, given to us, right? The opportunity was given to us. We played our position, and it's progressing because of listener help and
exactly, because not only because the listeners, but because their hunger for the truth, also because of our willingness and hunger for the truth.
But we also understand, though, if we screw up or if we say, we're not going to do it that way, then it's gone. It could be gone in the flash of a
absolutely
match,
and you remember we used to have debates. Should we focus more on current events, or should we focus more on Scripture? And we would go through discussions, debates. Not I don't want to say as far as arguments, but we would have semi-heated discussions about the direction to take the show, never having made a decision one way or the other.
No, but as soon as the microphone was turned on, it just seemed to go.
Was made for us.
Yeah,
correct.
It just went.
But being willing, I guess, is but what I wanted to say, being a willing vessel for the Lord is the beginning of that journey with Him. After you accept the Lord as your Savior and dedicate your life to Him, telling Him that you, as a human, have no control over your life, have no control over your sin and your nature. Once that is turned over to the Lord by you, the Lord does step in, and it doesn't happen overnight, but He will, as it says in the Bible, any man who knocks on the door, I will answer.
Right. Yep, exactly. Well, I'm just going to finish up with Bible prophecy here because it is the basis for everything. Bible prophecy, if you look at the Bible, look at the prophecies. The Bible prophecies deal with persons. They deal with nations, world leaders, and end-time events. Now, you could be talking about a king or a kingdom or, future global earthly events. Biblical prophecy includes them all. Nothing, even way back when, nothing was out of reach for God, of course. And we also have to understand the dark side, the ancient and present deceptive spirits of the dark side. They're still with us. So that's the other part of the equation. And biblical prophecy is distinctly different from any kind of counterfeit prophecy. In the work of fallen, very finite spirits, there were true prophets who knew and walked with God, of course, and there were also in the past, present, and there will be prophets predicted by the Spirit of God. We know this, who are false and who are guided by dark spirits with their end-time agenda. This is referenced in 1 Timothy 4, verse 1. Now, if you look at this, it predicts the massive increase of end-time counterfeit spirits and their prophecies, deceptive spiritual teachings and prophecies. Many of these false teachings will be written, disseminated, posted, published on the internet even to the world. Look at the warnings contained in 2 Thessalonians 2. That'll give you an idea. The true prophecies really are the only accurate glimpse of actual future events. You're not going to find it through a crystal ball or through tarot cards or anything else, any other measures. Just understand that. Prophecy is known years and years and years and decades and millennia in advance. Revelation 19, verse 19. The place, events, individuals, movements, where collective history is taking us. This prophecy. And people say, well, if God is, a just and kind and wonderful God, why is He taking us into this terrible period? The prophecy is not because God wants it to occur this way. It's a prophecy that will occur this way because of a number of things. I didn't. Go ahead. Oh, all right. Am I bouncing? Okay. I didn't know if I had sound problems or not. Okay. The visible return of Christ from heaven to end all radical evil and usher in this perfect peace and healing of the nations. Look, this is the result of prophetic developments, and the sequence of satanic evolution is necessary. It's a step-by-step process of Satan's actual and final work in this world. We know it's got to come to an end. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. And again, I refer you back one more time, 2 Thessalonians 2. I can say that word now. Yeah. So all of this, we're headed toward Revelation, the book of Revelation, and then Revelation 19, verse 19. And that talks about the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against the rider and the horseman and his army. And Russ Dizdar, again, Russ just nails this right home in his book, The Black Awakening, but he notes that it's connected, that prophecy there is connected to many other revelations in Scripture. You can go back to Daniel some 2,600 years ago, and it foretells the same story. Matthew 24, 1 Timothy 4, Thessalonians 2, 1 John 2, the entirety of the book of Revelation. It's the same message with the same identical prophetic authority. So we have to understand that this is where everything is headed. We're looking at through the revelations within the book of Revelation, or through the revelations in other scriptural material. We're looking at a very precise, very actual, very accurate glimpse of real history. And prophetic revelation is always given this picture of real-time future history. Has it not? Of course it has. The prophecy, as stated in Revelation 19:19, it's going to come about in the very detail as it's presented. So when you look at when you look at everything going on, understand that the Illuminati, the Luciferians. The New World Order involves and reveals really the goal of a Luciferian agenda. Now, you can go into a class, or you can listen to all YouTubes, and with few exceptions, they'll give you the information about the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, the occult symbolism. But will they give you the foundation of the Satanism that we're talking about? Will they give you the information about the real goal of this Luciferian agenda? I suppose they'll make it by inference or suggest that, but really this is at the heart, the core, because the people behind this plot, plan, and work against those who will lead masses, or work against the good, I should say, and they're going to lead the masses to the end game. The Luciferians, Russ labeled them chosen ones, and we're going to keep to that term. When we talk about Luciferians, when we talk about the satanic, those involved in the satanic, especially, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the chosen ones, remember that. Because they're the very evil spirits of millennia ago are here today. So just keep that in mind. The book of Revelation, especially Revelation 19:19, it does reveal the final goal of the coming Antichrist. Here we see the Antichrist on a field leading a global army into battle. So the Antichrist is there in leadership and has what he sought in the 7 years since his apocalypse to the world. So that's going to come true. The Antichrist and globalists got that far according to biblical prophecy. In Revelation 19:19, it reveals that the Antichrist does gather the world together in satanic synchronicity. Now I'm quoting Russ Dizdar there to the letter. I could go on, but you get the idea. I'm sure you get the idea. We're going to talk also about mind control. Mind control and the Nazis, man, it does play a huge role in everything. You've heard Paul McGuire talk about this references, the Nazis. You've heard others. In fact, Ted Broer talked about this. It's amazing what is taking place right now. The satanic playbook. Russ Dizdar talks again about the sequence of satanic evolution and the ancients and the coming chaos. When he wrote Black Awakening, I think he may have mentioned that in the context of, for example, 2012. People would think, well, things will take place in 2012. It's not necessarily what he meant at all, but he referenced that, and I think it's important to realize that, people look at 2012 and say, well, nothing happened. This is just this was a failed prophecy or a failed event in the future. This is an urban legend, a myth. Look, nothing happened. Well, did it? Did it not happen? Or did something happen? Was the spirit of darkness loosed completely? Look, I don't know. It seems that something certainly overtook us in 2012, or within that time period, doesn't it? I mean, can you tell? No, then also in to extend Satanism, talk to about what's going on over with Jeffrey Epstein and the royal family. You know about the satanic or the pedophilia that's taking place. Well, there's also a level. Now, I'm not saying, and please hear me well, I'm not saying that Epstein's involved in satanic ritual abuse or anything like that, but there is pedophilia alleged with the royal family, some people in power, Bill Clinton included. So, we're going to be exploring this because I think this is really the basis for the world order. and the Nazis and the Fourth Reich. It's interesting because Hitler and the Nazis really, in truth, didn't lose the war necessarily. Now that might sound, well, you're crazy, but you've got Luciferians, you've got the Nazis, the occult Nazis working overtime here in America. This satanic ascendancy, and it's infiltrated infiltrated every institution here in the Western world, well, throughout the world. But we talk about the Luciferians, Illuminatis, and such. Well, who are the Luciferians? If I can quote once again Russ Dizdar, and I'm just going to paraphrase a few things he has noted here in his book, The Black Awakening, when he talks about Luciferians, Illuminati, and streams of darkness, just very quickly. From page 66 of Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. And I want you to know, too, it's interesting because you get people like, I think Jim Carrey, if you watched him on a recent late-night television program making fun of people who believe in the Illuminati. But according to Illuminati, the book, The Cult that Hijacked the World, subtitle on page 66, the Illuminati consists of many of the world's richest families. They pay lip service to religion. They worship Lucifer. Well, that's pretty assertive there, isn't it? Their agents control the world's media, education, business, and politics. It's pretty clear who they are. And from another book, page 463, from the 18th century Bavarian Order, the Illuminati, here's what they say. The object of the first degrees of Illuminism is at once to train their young men and to be informed of everything that is going forward by a system of espionage. Sounds like our halls of Congress and other areas of power here in the United States and throughout the West. And then a history of secret societies, page 320 or 232. This included, and I'm quoting now, this included the fact that the Illuminati were proposing to destroy princes and prelates throughout the world and were to remove forever the feeling of local nationality from the minds of men. Does that sound familiar? We've been talking about this. The ways in which this was to be done involved infiltrating high positions in education, administration, and the press. So what we're seeing here is the groundwork, the foundation, the very structure that holds up everything else is the Satanism. And Satanism, Luciferianism, similar. The tactics, the goals, the origins, very similar. The book of Revelation predicts the outcome, Revelation 19:19. The various other books talk about the satanic influence, as I mentioned earlier, given the books. Now we're really at the foundation here. And there's a military trainer by the name of Lieutenant Jim Shannon. He was a producer of the First Earth Battalion Operations Manual. He learned all that he could about New Age. And remember Paul McGuire talking about New Age, alternative spirituality. And he sought to infuse military soldiers with new abilities so they'd be better trained and better protected. Now we're talking about those people like Steve Quayle and others who talk about super soldiers. In a recent YouTube video, this is, I shouldn't say recent, I suppose maybe 4 or 5 years ago, 3 years ago, he made a YouTube. Shannon asked, did you ever meet a Luciferian in your whole entire life? Have you ever met Illuminati? These are important questions, and those who have can say yes. Well, a chosen one I was with, a very highly trained Luciferian. Now this, according to Russ Dizdar now, paraphrasing from his work, was military trained. He gave Russ the First Earth Battalion manual in the 1990s. And it's interesting to hear Russ talk about this, because Russ heard the people involved in this describe to us the broader goal of creating super soldiers, soldiers who will serve the global elite, which is a Luciferian cause. The super soldier knew very well that the Luciferians and the Illuminate, they knew who they are today. And so do hundreds of thousands of other chosen ones across the U.S. and Europe. The Illuminati, the Illuminate of the past have clearly evolved and do, under massive supernatural presence and power, pull the strings in many places. Now think about that, because what you have is not just globalists now, not just people who are in favor of NAFTA, GATT, and no borders, but you've got people who are worshiping Lucifer. Now, some might say, well, we knew that. Well, okay, but there's a blueprint for that. And also the Illuminates and super soldiers. Anyway, the biblical truth in the contemporary reality is quite simple, folks. There will be a very powerful group, covert, that are seeking a very different destiny than we're living. The destiny of
will be or has
will
been.
Are. It has been, will be, and are. How's that? That covers everything.
Yeah. How about we'll go with what we know, which has been a clandestine group of people seeking an agenda that is against not only the people or populace of the world, but against the Almighty Himself.
Well,
starting with
it's a global war, or it's a war between the powers and principalities.
Yep, just like we talked about the evil starting in the Garden of Eden, and from the Adam and Eve, from their children, Cain and Abel, to the murder of Abel from Cain.
Yep.
It has since then continued to the giants coming down on the earth, the Nephilim coming down on the earth, mating with women, creating giants, to where they corrupted mankind, to where it says in Scripture that men thought of nothing but evil continually. So the Lord took Noah, the only righteous man, or the only pure bloodline left on the earth, put him on an ark that he built, that Noah built, and the Great Deluge, as it's been called, or the Great Flood, happened, and has been recorded in all annals of history, regardless of where in the world people originated from. And after that, we have a reassemblance of an Assyrian empire, which created Babylon, the Tower of Babel, with Nimrod as the head, creating a building, or the Tower of Babel, as a tower whose height or top will reach the heavens, as it has been said. But the ambitions were cut short when the Lord
look at the Freedom Tower,
confounded the speech, so that they were left off, as it says in the Bible, He confounded their speech, so they left off to build the city, meaning they were dispersed across the earth, their languages were confounded. It was called Babel, or confusion, and the agenda to build or complete the tower was never given away. It was still part of, as it states in the Bible, that they still went off to build this tower, but they could not do so collectively, as their languages were all confounded. And I don't know if anybody's seen this, but I heard a commercial on the radio where there's a new language learning software by a company called Babbel. You can now learn any language.
That's not a new company,
Well, it's new to me, at least.
Right.
And it was surprising to me to hear, of all the names,
Babel Fish,
to learn languages, they would choose the title Babel.
Yeah, it's not new, but that kind of caught my attention when I first heard it some time ago. Let me just finish this, and then we can move on. But so I guess to me it's important for people to understand when for example, Russ Dizdar is talking about super soldiers. He's talking about the foot soldiers, really, of the Illuminati. And it's interesting because the Illuminati are really the people pushing, or those pushing for the Luciferian cause, those under the Luciferian cause.
Yeah, it could be described as the spiritual powers of darkness and their influence upon man, and the men that carry out those influences, or it could be described as
transhumanistic too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a spiritual and human endeavor.
Right.
Is what the word Illuminati encompasses, at least for me.
Yeah. Yes, but they're the people, the string pullers. No. They're going to push for, and here's what they need. They need a global consensus so that to unite the world under their control, which the global consensus is going to rise out of the Hegelian dialectic and perhaps
a democracy. A populace. The populace has to be the driver of the action.
Exactly.
And in order to do that, they must ascribe as they have here, the people as the power behind the government, when really it's the small power brokers that are behind the power of the government, but through what you talked about, the manipulation, the mind control.
That's
people have subjected themselves to be conditioned to go along and agree with an evil agenda. And therefore, by default, the populace does call for and want this evil New World Order without even knowing as much.
Right, and Joe, the reason too that we're hitting this so hard is, if you don't understand, and I think that this is so important, if people don't understand the satanic aspect and understand the satanic parts, components of this, you're not going to understand the larger game plan. You've got to understand the intricacies of the satanic angle and aspects of the Illuminati. That will then allow you to make sense of the things you're hearing on the news, and it will also put in perspective whether it's scenes out of Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz, or CIA mind control, or pedophilia allegations of powerful people, including the royalty. It is only through the prism of the satanic where you can understand. Now, you might, or you'll have a working understanding. This is why we're spending so much time on this foundation, before we lay out the actual course. This is a key component to all of this, because this lies in the fallen one, and it speaks directly, folks, to the Nephilim. And let me go over this again, because I got a couple of emails saying, "Oh, Doug, you're wrong," when you had you talked about the Nephilim and the Rephaim and the demonic or the disembodied spirits. Steve Quayle wrote a book called Genesis 6 Giants. Well, his second edition clarifies some terms, and I was able to see and actually do some editing of the preface for the second edition, and I want to thank Steve Quayle for that. But having seen the preface for the second edition, he makes distinctions. The Nephilim are, and this is to make so everyone's on the same page in terms of terms. The Nephilim are the fallen ones. They are the ones who mated with the women to create hybrids. Those are the Rephaim. Now, I'm going to be very clear on this, because once more, I received quite a few emails, or a number of emails, saying, "Hey, wait a second, you're wrong. You're getting your terms confused." Well, no. This is now. This is what Steve had come up with here. Fallen angels came to earth in their rebellion against God. Jude chapter 1 verse 6 does state, "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto judgment of the great day." So in other words, these fallen angels left their own habitation. They didn't stay in the heavenly realm or plane of existence. Instead, they came to earth and they had sex with human women. Now, this is referring to the fallen angels, which is referring to, or the word for that is Nephilim. Man, I was so confused. I got to tell you, I was so confused over that. Now, from those sexual unions, the Nephilim and the human women, from those sexual unions, the giants were born. And subsequently to become the basis of all worldwide myths and legends about the mighty men of renown of both historic and legendary figures. So who are these people? Well, look at the word Nephilim. It's used only twice in the Bible, once in Genesis chapter 6 and secondly in the book of Numbers chapter 13, verses 30 and 33. In the Hebrew language, it relates to the verb nephal, meaning to fall or the fallen ones. And it was the fallen ones, or the Nephilim, that genetically corrupted the hereditary line of human beings, and did so before and after the great flood of Noah's day. So while the word Nephilim is only used twice in the Old Testament, giants are referred to as Rephaim over 20 times, 20 in the Old Testament. In fact, they've got a valley named after them, known as the Valley of the Rephaim. You can turn to the book of Joshua in the Bible, and you'll find it there. It's clear that the word Rephaim is a very specific reference to the giants born between the fallen angels and the daughters of Adam and Eve, to corrupt that Adam and Eve God bloodline. Now, this hybrid progeny always possesses supernatural strength and size, and they quite frequently exhibit cannibalism. So, the word Rephaim never refers to fallen angels. So you don't mix the terms Rephaim and Nephilim. They're two separate entities. And Nephilim, fallen angels, Rephaim, the hybrid of the fallen angels and human women. Hopefully that makes sense. Folks, this will be, well, it already is, in the preface to the second edition of Genesis 6 Giants. And so it should be obvious that those who issued from or were the children of these angels, these rebellious angels, would be different in the words that were used to describe them, right? Obviously. You just look at the words, for example, the Father is not the Son, but the Son is the offspring of the Father. You've got to note the language when you're translating. Well, it's correct to say, for example, the giants were the, and I'll use this in quotes, issue or the offspring of the Nephilim, the fallen angel fathers. The mixing of the terms is not. And Steve also notes that there's a second point here, a very key point. Nephilim are not giants.
No, Nephilim are the angels.
Nephilim are the hybrid offspring. No, pay attention. See,
let's take the break. Back, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 of this Monday, February 9th, 2015 edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Tonight is our part 2 of the University of Conspiracy, Fact and History, where we were talking about current events in the context of the world and U.S. history.
We could have thought of a better name, right?
5 minutes before the show, and you're like,
no. I mean a better name, for the course. Actually, I have on our SoundCloud page. In fact, on our past show page, I have a shield, a university shield up, and maybe at the end of all of this, people will, we should administer graduation certificates. But seriously, the importance of Satanism and Luciferianism, and how Bible prophecy relates to the New World Order cannot be overemphasized, because it is the driver of the action. It is the belief system behind the New World Order. And until you understand that, we are not going to understand a thing. We can talk about the Council of Three, or the Committee of 300, and the Bilderberger and Trilateral Commission until our eyes, fall out and our tongues tie up. But we need to understand in great detail the Satanistic aspect of this. And the foremost expert on this, in my view anyway, is Russ Dizdar. And it's interesting, too, because having had the opportunity of talking with Russ Dizdar, remember, Joe, the guest we had on, the Detective Cameron? Detective Cameron.
Is he the author of...
It's Me?
Yeah, I do remember. Goodness.
John A. Cameron, It's Me, the serial killer you never heard of.
You might not be able to find that because I might have it.
No, I've got it. Well, actually, we had two. I ordered a book prior to his coming on, and then he sent us a book. Okay. And so you've got one, I think he sent us, and I've got the one that we ordered, but Edward Wayne Edwards. And this is, now see, when we had him on, in fact, we had talked about the case. The Zodiac, right? The very interesting book. But when I was talking to Russ too about John Cameron, and there might be some interaction there. But the reason I mentioned Cameron is because there are a lot of crimes that are committed, a lot of murders, a lot of serial killings that are done, and they're not. Well, they're done, but they're done by Satanists. Okay, and I mentioned this last week. I'll mention this again, just to drive this point home. I'm looking at my notes here. I don't see. Wait a minute. Hang on a minute. All right, class, just talk amongst yourselves. No, don't do that. I'm going to have to throw an eraser at you guys. All right, here it is. Jeffrey Dahmer. I was going to say John Wayne Gacy, but Jeffrey Dahmer. Little is known, or the public did not know, that Dahmer, for example, had built an altar of human thigh bones of his victims. See, that should speak volumes. That should speak volumes.
It's dedication.
Right. Dedication.
How sick can somebody be?
Well, yeah.
And that's something I've never heard before, but one of the first things that popped into my mind when you said that was, can humans think to that level of depravity? I mean, is that something that is based on a human thought?
And this goes to mind control. And once again, we hear people talk about mind control, MK Ultra, and all of these various military operations that have taken place. In order to fully understand that, and even you watch specials, and I know American Heroes channel, I think it's a relatively new channel on cable and dish and direct or whatever those things are, satellite, I guess. They talk about the occultism in the National Socialist Party with Hitler. Well, and here's where it gets really kind of complicated and dicey. The United States brought over 9,000 Nazis from the hierarchy of the National Socialist Party after the war. During the war and after the war, the Nazis hooked up with the industrialists here in America, but also with the Muslims. All right? And you've got to understand, and we'll lay this out in greater detail at a later time about how all of this is interconnected, which is why, for example, you see mind control progressing from the middle of the 20th century to, we'll say, a guy eating the face off of someone else, and the media and officials blaming it on bath salts. No. Then you've got these other mind control victims. Now, we're talking about multi-generational victims here. This is so important to understand. The Nazis, that era, America, and the Nazis in the West, they perfected, or I shouldn't say perfected, but they worked on mind control, for example, from a satanic aspect, or the angle of Satanism. And what we're seeing today is the evolution, the progression of mind control in multiple generations. So the generation of today is stronger than the generation of the last, and the one before that, and then the one during the Nazi era. So you're looking at four full generations away from the original mind control program. Now, last week, we talked about, very quickly, 5 primary reasons for rituals, meaning 5 primary reasons why the Satanists will have rituals. And I'm just going to touch on these again in case you missed them last week. The first one is to obtain demonic powers for themselves. The second reason is to instill and install powers in others within their coven, and that word is used deliberately. Thirdly, to release, or even to release spiritual forces to cover or protect themselves. Number 4, to send demons out against pastors, against whoever they consider to be enemies of their agenda. And what I found particularly interesting, number 5, is to send demons to dirty the air. Now, those are words that Russ Dizdar had talked about extensively in his series ShatterTheDarkness.net. Over cities, for example, dirty the air over cities to create this oppressive presence. And very interesting. But before the break, we're talking about, and I'm just going to finish this up very quickly. Before the break, we're talking about the difference between Nephilim, Rephaim, and demons. Because there seems to be this chic movement of today. Let's cast out demons, right? Let's cast out demons.
Well, that actually has been suppressed and taken away. It's been given a title in a medical field known as psychiatry.
Right.
And, instead of casting out demons, it's been dubbed a disorder of sorts, whereas in the Bible we read
DSM-3 disorder.
The DSM-5 is the latest psychiatric manual, which has been implemented this January, where it lists the belief in a supernatural being as a form of mental disorder, among other things. And it this field of psychiatry has been expanding, and instead of religious or spiritual issues being handled by the church, an example of this is something we talked about a few shows ago, the witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts,
right,
where the Puritans had a spiritual situation on their hands, dealt with it with their own intellectual human ways, even knowing the scriptures, knowing the power of the Lord, and how to rid demons from their society, yet chose their own ways of doing so instead of following what the scriptures said. We know of stories in the scriptures where even the apostles tried to cast out demons, and Jesus in turn had to do it himself, saying, some demons take much prayer and fasting to rid from a person, and if you rid a person of a demon and it comes back 7 times stronger or 7 times more demons. It is
right, but
what has been.
It's not like a drive-through demon exorcism.
No.
Okay, we can't have that.
We have to have men and women of God who utilize the powers bestowed by God upon believers to exorcise these demons out of people. Instead, it has been turned, as I said, into a psychiatric or medical type disorder, where the root of the problem, being spiritual, is treated with a drug or a pharmakia or magic potion, as it is known or was known in the ancient Greek, and in doing so has been able to suppress what used to be major spiritual issues into scientific explanations and treatments of from men instead of from believers of Jesus who can rid people of these ailments instead of suppressing the symptoms and comatosing the subject of this oppression, the spiritual oppression.
Interesting. Well, when we talk about demons, and just for purpose of definition, a demon is a disembodied spirit that you can look the the root word of the word demon, but it arises when a Rephaim or giant dies. So you've got Nephilim, which are the fallen angels. You've got the Rephaim, which are the offspring of the Nephilim and the women. And then you've got when a Rephaim dies, as they do, it's part human. There is a disembodied spirit, and that's known as a demon. So there. Now we've got this consistency of language. And I don't think Steve will, he can yell at me tomorrow night if he says, hey, you shouldn't have said that. Well, actually, I think he might have it posted on his website. So, anyway, I want to move, Joe, with your permission, I just want to move very quickly. I'm taking this out of order because I do want to talk about the Nazis and the Fourth Reich, and really because that is important to me. But I think there's something even a little bit more salient right now that we should touch on. Most people, I don't know. Do most people know this? I suppose those people who are paying attention. In fact, those of you who do know it or are familiar with it, you may have forgotten some of it. And it's a good refresher. Again, we're laying the groundwork. We're still laying the groundwork because this is pretty hot and heavy. You need to know all of this, or at least be with someone who does know this, because when the things go south, when things do hit the fan, when we do have this series of calamities, and we will, behind all of this is going to be Satanism. It's going to be exactly all the stuff we're talking about. But you heard Brian Williams confess to, or issue this awkward apology over the, what was it? He said he was in a helicopter or something.
I haven't been paying attention. Yeah. Something about lying about being in some type of helicopter crash.
All right. Well, we know, and here's the other side, or beyond. We'll just call it beyond Brian Williams. That is the CIA and their infiltration of and role in the media. And one of the classic works was by Carl Bernstein. Now, I'm not a fan necessarily of Carl Bernstein in terms of his beliefs, but I don't have to be. No, it has to be. Back in the 70s, well, he left the Washington Post back in 1977. Of course, this is Woodward Bernstein fame of the Watergate era. But he left the Washington Post in 77. And he, following his departure there, he began to look at the relationship of the CIA and the press during the Cold War years. What happened was after he quit in 77, he spent 6 months doing this. In October of 77, he wrote an extensive, it was like half the Rolling Stone magazine of the relationship between the CIA and the media. Okay, well, here's the deal.
Half a Rolling. You could fill up half of an Encyclopedia Britannica.
Well, right, but now this was cutting edge at the time. But when you look at this today, and this is important from a historical perspective, I believe. And when you frame it during the Cold War, now remember we were talking earlier about the Nazis, and we'll get to the Nazis, but then go forward to the Cold War, and also understand what the CIA's role is in mind control. We'll get to that too. But let's look now, right now, kind of seemingly out of line. However, I don't think so. I think it's important to look at this now because what Bernstein wrote and talked about was he found that in 1953, a guy by the name of Joseph Alsop, he was one of America's leading, well, he was like the Edward R. Murrow at the time in print. He went to the Philippines to cover the Philippines election. Except one thing. He didn't go there because his news department said, "Hey, I need you to go there and cover the election." He went there because he was asked to do so by the newspapers that printed his column. He went at the request of the CIA. You see, he didn't go because of his work. He went at the request of the CIA under the cover of the media, of a media person. He was one of more than 400 at the time now journalists who, for the past quarter century, going back into the middle 50s, early to middle 50s, had secretly carried out various assignments for the CIA. And those assignments were pretty severe. The journalists, the relationship with the CIA, some were just, kind of passive. Others were very, very explicit, very extreme. Now, there was cooperation, accommodation, and overlap. Journalists provided just a wide array of clandestine services, from simple intelligence gathering, acting as the eyes and ears, or as go-betweens, as actual couriers with spies in communist countries. Today, now let me just say this today, and I might have mentioned this before, but it bears mentioning again. The CIA has people in Hollywood and in the circles within the news corporations in New York, Atlanta, Los Angeles, where they're usually women, and they are hired to do nothing but go to the after parties or after parties of events, and to listen and report back to the CIA. In some cases, they're hired to go to these parties to talk with producers, high-level producers, writers, and pitch ideas. They control the news. Where they don't control the news, they listen to what's going on. But going back to Bernstein's findings, it was very common between, let's say, I'm just going to say between, let's say, 55 to 80. It was very common during that time. I can't say that. Let's say between 50 and 75. It was very common for reporters to give their entire notebooks, copy them, and give them to the CIA, their handlers. There was one episode, and if you remember this, ladies and gentlemen, Lou Grant. Remember the television show Lou Grant? This was on in the mid to late 70s. Edward Asner played a newspaper editor for the Tribune, I believe it was. There was one episode where the Lou Grant, Edward Asner, was informed or suspected of a CIA plant in his newsroom. Now, this was kind of big at the time. It wasn't this massive series like MASH was, where you'd know it instantly if you hear the word MASH, you know what I'm talking about. This was kind of a laid-back series, and it lasted, I'm not sure how many seasons, but Edward Asner played this newspaper editor. And it made it made the CIA uncomfortable. That in itself made the CIA uncomfortable. Now, I'm no Ed Asner fan. I don't necessarily agree with his beliefs and philosophy, but this just shows you how art imitates life, right? Not life imitating art, art imitating life. Anyway, when we're talking about the CIA and journalism overlap, you had the foreign correspondents helping push the CIA agendas. Stringers, freelancers, they were interested in the spy business. They would file articles, and then there were full-time CIA employees who were masquerading as journalists in other countries. In many cases, CIA documents show journalists were engaged to perform tasks for the CIA with the consent of the management of America's leading news organizations. Now, the history of the CIA's involvement with our press, it's shrouded by an official policy of obfuscation and deception. Why? Because the use of journalists has been among the most productive means of intelligence gathering employed by the CIA. It works. Simply put, it works. The agency had to cut back, because of they had to cut back on these reporters because the pressure from inside the media at that time. Now that has since changed. So for a while, we'll say between 80 and mid 80s, or between 80 and maybe the early 90s, until the Bush years, the second half of the Bush years. That's when it really got going again. George Herbert Walker Bush, that is. Now, we can identify executives at that time who were either working for or in cooperation with the CIA. Time Magazine, Henry Luce. CBS, William Paley. New York Times, Arthur Hayes. Louisville Courier-Journal, Barry Bingham Sr. Copley News Service, James Copley. Now, for the younger people, you probably don't know who I'm talking about. You might know Time, you might obviously know CBS, but New York Times, but the persons you probably don't know. The other organizations that had full cooperation with the CIA. You remember the old Saturday Evening Post? How about the Miami Herald? How about the Mutual Broadcasting System, Newsweek, Scripps Howard, Hearst Newspapers, big time, UPI, AP, NBC, ABC. I already mentioned CBS, Reuters. According to CIA records, the most valuable, New York Times, CBS, and Time. There was a ABC correspondent who worked for the agency, not for a newspaper on behalf of the agency, but for the agency, very well known. The CIA has not identified this person, but at any rate, this is huge. These people were nothing more than, the journalists were nothing more than operatives. They tended to see themselves as trusted friends of the agency who performed favors, usually without pay and under the color of national security. This Joseph Alsop I mentioned, when asked, he said, "I'm proud they asked me and proud to have done it." Okay. The notion that a newspaper man doesn't have a duty to his country is perfect. Folks, this is just out of control, and it gets worse. Now you can go back to 1976, the investigation by the CIA. Remember the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Church Committee hearings? They uncovered the dimensions, the depth, the scope, and the breadth of the agency's involvement, the CIA's involvement with the press, and it became apparent to several members of the panel. Top CIA officials, including William Colby, George Herbert Walker Bush, they persuaded the committee to restrict the inquiry, the Church Committee, and not to mention and deliberately misrepresent the actual scope of the activities in their final report. This according to yes, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Live radio, you gotta love it. I did that, by the way, when I was at you know what? You gotta stop doing that with those headphones.
Hi, Paul. I had to take them off.
Yeah, I know. Wow.
Studio dog somehow opened the door and started rummaging around down here, so I had to...
Just because she doesn't have opposable thumbs, look, she's smart, okay?
I had to quietly try to take the headphones off. I don't know if you hear the ringing. Are you hearing like a ringing?
No, I'm hearing voices in my head. Does that count? See, now here's the thing. I say that. You watch. You're going to have some absolute whack job comment that I'm hearing voices in my head. Okay. There it goes. You know what, folks, we're going to take a real quick break right now. We have to make an adjustment to see if we can find that hearing, or that ringing. For American Survival Wholesale, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Can you believe it? American Survival Wholesale. I happened to look, and they've been with us for over a year. What a great company, Christian-owned, veteran-owned company. They have the greatest organic line. They also have, Joe, you were talking last time about what? You were talking about the seed line they've got.
Heirloom organic seeds that have been introduced now and by American Survival Wholesale. What these seeds do are something different than what any other seeds have done. They're non-hybrid, non-GMO, storable seeds, up to 1 acre of plants, 23 varieties of crops for under $50. Again, non-hybrid, non-GMO, storable seeds, 23 different varieties, up to 1 acre of plantable seeds for under $49. Not only do you get the seeds, but when you plant them, and you grow them, harvest them, and eat them, the seeds that you gather from those crops you've harvested can be reused again, as they are still GMO-free.
That's really cool. I mean, folks, American Survival Wholesale, they are the innovators. Number one, the packaging, the way they not the way they package, but I mean, they don't like get a funnel and put the stuff in the can and then seal the can. No, I mean, the way they organize the packages, the different kinds of products, it allows you to get the best for your money.
Yeah, they're easy growing. Every seed variety has been personally grown in numerous test gardens to ensure success.
Cool.
For the first-time gardener to the old pro, the non-hybrid seeds, open pollinated or heirloom seeds, breed true, which means you can harvest the seeds from your garden and at the end of the season store them for future gardening, ensuring continuous seed replenishment. For the past several years, seed companies have been producing more and more hybrid seeds, which have been good growing characteristics, but will not breed true, which means the seeds collected at the year end will not produce a plant with the same characteristics. These do.
Absolutely. AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, folks. AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Why? Because the hour is late. And the prices are good. The people are great. The service is fabulous. And you need them. That's the go-to company, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. One more thing. I got 2 words for you. 2 words. I want to guess what they are. No, don't guess. English toffee. This is a very let me tell you, this is a very specialized gift. This is not. I mean, this is a very specialized. I learned this today. I'll tell you why. When I got I went from my office to my house and walked in, and my wife had said, I want you to take a look at this, and she had these 2 Valentine hearts, one for Joe, one for me, or one for us. It was a slab of English toffee. Now, this is a very specialized product, folks, because here it is. It's made with only pure, natural, organic ingredients. Okay, and it's handmade. This is not machine made. This isn't, no. Jeannie actually runs a sweatshop. Okay, she's got like a whole bunch of illegal aliens there, and they work ungodly hours. No, I'm just kidding. Seriously, this is a gourmet, very specialized gourmet item, but it's affordable. Today, Monday, February 9th. It's the deadline for 2 very special offers. Here's the deal. You just place an order of $30 or more. You're going to receive a free handcrafted, heart-shaped slab of mouth-watering gourmet toffee. That's a $22 gift. Spend $30, you get $22 free. Okay, let's give away the house. Or if you want, you can order 2 10-ounce gourmet gift boxes at $19.50 per box and get one free. Both offers are good until tonight at midnight or while supplies last. Because let me tell you, it's a labor-intensive process and it's a labor of love. But if you want to receive it by Valentine's Day, you got to order it today by midnight. Just mention Hagmann and Hagmann in the comments section. You know the drill. Go to honesttogoodnesstoffee.com. That's honesttogoodnesstoffee.com. Mention Hagmann and Hagmann in the comments section. Order the best mouth-watering gourmet toffee, English toffee, only pure, natural, organic ingredients. 1 pound. We love our listeners' heart-shaped gourmet gift slab. This slab really doesn't do it. It's really a work of art.
Yeah,
it really is. But anyway, no high fructose corn syrup, no trans fat. It's gluten free, nothing artificial. This is gourmet. It's a very specialized product. They're partners of ours. Okay, I mean we're partnered up with them. They're partnered up with us. Christian owned. Let me tell you something. Very, very good people. They're part of our
very, very
network
delicious
family.
coffee.
That's right. It's honesttogoodnesstoffee.com. Go to HagmannHagmann.com, click on the box in the middle, and there you have it. Very special product. I think we got our sound issues somewhat fixed. I
hear no ringing anymore, so I think we're
all right. That did take some gymnastics to get to it, but let's just come back and as I was saying very quickly, and we'll just wrap this up, but I think it's important to really understand the depth of the CIA involvement in our press. We know it's happening, but do you know the history? You've got to go back to the earliest stages of the Cold War. Allen Dulles, he became the director of the CIA in 1953. He sought to establish this recruiting and cover capability with all of the journalistic institutions. Folks, do your research on Allen Dulles. Under the guise of accredited news correspondents, Dulles believed that CIA operatives in other countries would be accorded this degree of access and freedom of movement that could otherwise not be obtainable by citizens or any other type of cover. So American publishers were willing to commit the resources or to have the people inserted within their companies. And this was under the auspices to struggle against or to fight global communism. Instead, now what Bernstein doesn't really get into is the insidious nature of the infiltrated journalistic community by the CIA operatives and what their real agenda was. Because you see, the lie, as I've been told many times, the lie is different at every level. So you might have somebody thinking they are fighting communism and working for the good of the country when in fact they are doing just the opposite, because you had many journalists go out under the cover of this journalistic cover that created the ability for our CIA, our intelligence, and all of Western intelligence, from the British, French, American, to topple countries. Think Iran back in 1953. Contracts with the head of news organizations. That was Dulles' main goal or main duties. There were others who were involved in that, but Dulles was really the keynote guy for this. I'm just looking over this. I think what we'll do is make the rest required reading, because there are some murky details of CIA relationships with other individuals, news organizations, some pretty interesting stuff with the New York Times, very interesting things with CBS, for example, and other news agencies. And I'll just kind of wrap it up here. Zygmunt Brzezinski. Remember, he was a professor at Columbia. Boy, isn't Columbia, isn't like that the universal magnet for what, Joe? I don't know.
Well, here's a quick clip of Zbigniew Brzezinski for those who have never heard him speak.
All right.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
Yeah, that's not a real reassuring statement, folks, is it?
No, but that is a perfect example of the mindset of this man and his fellow evil men in arms as they hold their commissions, that be it the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group. These are the think tank brainiacs behind the agenda of eugenics, of the one world system, of the satanic agenda becoming more than a plan on paper or a triumph in battle. Right. This is the carrying out of the prophecy that the Lord spoke about the not only the mark of the beast system, the Antichrist, but this is the great delusion that the Lord spoke about. These are the people behind that great delusion who are tasked with carrying it out in their generation.
Precisely.
And he's one of the main characters.
You know, and people might say, well, why are you going over this? Because the various, it's kind of like looking at this jigsaw puzzle, and they're all, you know, like little different shapes on each piece of the puzzle, and we're identifying the edges.
Yeah, and regardless of whether, you know, how far back it may seem in the biblical writings of ancient times as the ways that these evils would encompass a society or a city or a empire are very similar in nature to the way they're done today, just with the expansion of the technology and the ability to communicate and manipulate. It is just done at a much more efficient pace than it was back then.
Right.
And in a much more attractive way
yes.
than it was back then.
Thank you. Yes. And part of that is because of the Internet. When people say, well, we're going to, and we'll get into this too at the top of the hour here, but about the control of the Internet, people look at it without realizing the intent behind the control of the Internet, you know, this net neutrality. Well, who controls the Internet? Well, in order to control the information, you need to control the structure. It's kind of like, think of it this way: you got a gas line going into a particular house, and if you want to control the ambient temperature inside that house or inside that office building, what's the best way to do that, or what's one of the ways you can do that? You can go in and adjust all the thermostats in this building, or you can control the pipeline that feeds the gas. Anyway, that's kind of an example, but really quick here. There are people today, and I'm going to say this flat out, there are people today who you would not believe that are witting accomplices to the CIA for patriotic reasons in their mind. Some you would recognize, I'm sure, by name. There are people who are absolute unwitting idiots for the CIA. Okay, not when I say that, I mean, I don't know how else to say that. Really, I don't know. Let me give you an example here. Journalists. Let's keep in line with journalists and authors. This, and I learned this in a very interesting way. And you might want to listen between the lines here. You see, let's just say you're going to write a book on, I don't know, the strange death of a really high-ranking official in the administration. So here's what you do. Or let's just say that an author wants to do that. I'm going to do this. They develop a contact, or a contact actually cozies up to that person and begins feeding that person information that's verifiable. It's verifiable. But it's verifiable only at a certain level. In other words, let's just say if you can infiltrate willingly the media, you can infiltrate areas of government. So let's just say I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to write a book about the death of a high-ranking cabinet official. So what am I going to do? I'm going to research, right? I'm going to conduct interviews. I'm going to just send out a spate, a flurry, a whole bunch of Freedom of Information Act requests, man. And I'm going to town, baby. I'm going to town. Well, guess what? Who gets those requests? In some cases, they go to the proper place. In other places, they get intercepted. And the returns on the information are exactly what that handler wants that person who's writing the book, me, for example, to know. Or to write, I should say, not to know. It's got to be true. I got it via the Freedom of Information Act. Are you so stupid? Are you so flippin' naive? Are you so green behind the ears? Are you such a... Really? You're being gamed. I'm being gamed. But see, journalists in the field, most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, they're being gamed by the people in charge of the information. You control the information, you control the book, and you can damn well bet I'm going to take my book and I'm going to say, you know what, this book right here that I wrote, man, this is the cat's meow, man. This is it, baby, right here. I got it. I can prove to you. I can prove to you the information. Why? Government documents. Yeah, I got the government documents that I was supposed to get. The way this worked briefly in the past, a journalist will say based in some foreign country, or even in America, it doesn't matter. Journalists, we'll just go with a foreign country because the domestic situation, that raises a whole different line of questions. But let's say a person based in the Netherlands, or Vienna, we'll say Vienna, ordinarily would be under the general direction of the Vienna station chief and report to a case officer. Some correspondents or U.S.-based reporters who made frequent trips abroad reported directly to the CIA officials in Langley. But here's the other side of that. The CIA often were involved in planting very subtly concocted pieces of misinformation. They hosted, and they still do this. They host parties, they host receptions. They designed to bring together American agents and foreign spies and other people, and they feed them information. They take and they give. 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 and they serve black propaganda. You think you're having the stuffed salmon for lunch, but you're actually having a super huge portion of black propaganda. And then what they'll do is, in some cases, they'll provide hotel rooms, or it's extremely complex. And such a relationship might just begin informally, but it progresses to total control. Some cases there's blackmail involved. Other cases there might be favors. Oh, yeah, a party here and a party there, a lunch here, a coffee there, a few more lunches, a few more favors, and then you're in. In one of the sitcoms, the guy always says, "That's how they get you." Yeah, that's how they get you. So the CIA, as it was in 1977, as it's always been since the days of Alan Dulles, William Colby, and others, and through today, and especially today under John O'Brennan, are heavily involved in all operations of the media, whether it's in New York, Los Angeles, Hollywood, Chicago, Atlanta, wherever, Miami. And all of these people are being controlled, or not all of them, but a large percentage of those movers and shakers are being controlled by the CIA operatives. And for what purpose? It changes slightly with the different administrations, but the goal is the same, because they're all going back to the original premise of this. They're all Luciferians. They're all satanic in nature, in agenda, in an objective. This is exactly what's taking place. You see, the media is a captured operation, but who's it captured by? Is it captured by the good guys or the bad? The bad. But who are the bad guys? They're the Luciferians. They're the satanic people. Are all of the CIA operatives bad? No. But you can bet the higher you go, the worse it gets. And you can bet that the higher you go, the greater the lies being told. It's kind of like the Masonic model. And that's what's going on in Hollywood. That's what's going on with our news. And I might add this. Our news now is nothing more than entertainment, or actually it's being used as programming. It's to distract. The news, what you hear in the news, is a distraction. What entertainment used to be, and entertainment now is the conveyance of the news. Please don't underestimate that. Do not underestimate the fact that the news is now the entertainment. And entertainment, the Hollywood, is that's where the messages are being passed. Folks, we're right back. Joe?
Yeah, with that, we'll go to our break.
Valentine's Day is 5 days away. Don't wait. We give you a reason not to wait. ProFlowers, folks, proflowers.com, proflowers.com. Remember that. Commit that to memory, proflowers.com. Visit proflowers.com. Click on the microphone box in the upper right-hand corner. Type in the word Hagmann, Hagmann. That'll take you to our page. There, today only, 15% off, but they've got this offer, just tremendous. 2 dozen assorted roses, decadent chocolates, a free glass vase, all for just $29.99 from proflowers.com. You got to click on the blue box in the top right-hand corner. Type in Hagmann, Hagmann, and today only you'll get an extra 15% off of those already great deals. It's just a great deal. Great people love them, love the product. You will not be sorry. In fact, you'll be pressed. You'll be the star of the show. Just go to proflowers.com. Use our code Hagmann. But remember, that's an extra 15% off only today. Now, getting back to the show. Mentioned also, and I got a couple of requests for this, asking about the Tavistock Institute. We talk about this all the time, and more groundwork, more important people know about the Tavistock Institute, but perhaps not in the depth that they need to know. The Tavistock Institute, briefly, is formed in 1947. It's an independent, not-for-profit organization. It supposedly, ostensibly, combines research in the social sciences with professional practice. Now, they have invaded all sectors of our society, of Western society: government, industry, commerce, health, welfare, education, nationally and internationally. And the clients range from multinationals to small community groups. This is really, the Tavistock Institute has always had secret ties since its inception to British Freemasonry. You see, the Tavistock Institute is the best kept secret of the West. And the elements, there are three, that combine to make the Institute extremely unusual, folks. The first one, it has the independence of being entirely self-financing. There are no subsidies from the government or other sources. The action research orientation places it between, but not in, the worlds of academia and consultancy. So in other words, it's kind of in that murky, gray, nebulous area, and its variety of disciplines, man, they range from anthropology to economics to political science to sociology and psychology. Joe was mentioning this psychology and psychiatry.
Yeah.
You know, it's
I'm learning many of these psychiatric disorders stem from myths, from ancient Greek people who have been held up as gods.
Right.
And one that I learned recently was narcissism, the history of narcissism. Narcissus being a man. And I won't go through the 6-page document chronicling what the progression from a man called, or with the name narcissist or Narcissus, from that myth stemming to a personality disorder here in the present.
Well, there are many people, I believe, that conform to the quality of narcissism or the characteristics of narcissism. But just to give you an idea, Sigmund Freud, since you mentioned the psychiatry, Sigmund Freud is really the prophet of the Tavistock Institute. There's a statue of Sigmund Freud outside of the Tavistock Institute in London, or in the UK, and University of Sussex. The Tavistock Institute in the UK. Now, what about outside of the UK? What about here in the United States? What organizations, what establishments, what companies are extensions of the Tavistock Institute? Number 1, Stanford Research. Number 2, MIT, Hudson Institute, Heritage Foundation. That's right, Heritage Foundation. The Center of Strategic and International Studies at Georgetown. That's where the State Department personnel are trained. The U.S. Air Force Intelligence, the RAND, and MITRE corporations. Remember Rebecca Roth talking about MITRE? If you don't remember that, third hour, Rebecca Roth, Methodical Illusion, talking about MITRE Corporation. That was a fantastic interview, folks. If you go to our past shows, that's been updated. That page finally has arisen, and it gives you 3 links: one to the BTR player, the second to a download of an MP3, and the third to a SoundCloud, which you can also download. And the SoundCloud is maybe a third or a half of the file size as the other two, but or you can play it directly off SoundCloud. But interestingly, the MITRE Corporation, as mentioned by Rebecca Roth. So and I'll say this, the personnel of the corporations I mentioned, they're required to undergo indoctrinations at one or more of those Tavistock-controlled institutions. The network of groups, of secret groups, such as the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, they're conduits for instructions to the Tavistock network. Tavistock, they developed this mass brainwashing techniques, and you might recall the movie with Frank Sinatra in it, Manchurian Candidate. The Tavistock Institute developed the mass brainwashing techniques which were first used experimentally on American POWs in Korea. The experiments in crowd control methods have been widely used on the American public. It's a surreptitious but nevertheless outrageous assault on our freedoms. They modify individual behavior through topical psychology. We can get into the history behind the Tavistock Institute. They're the ones that originated the mass civilian bombing raids carried out by Roosevelt and Churchill purely as a clinical experiment in mass terror. Remember the Dresden bombings? Remember that? The records were kept of the results as they watched the guinea pigs react under these controlled laboratory conditions. These all Tavistock and American Foundation techniques have a single goal, and that's this. And please understand this: it's to break down the psychological strength, our mental strength, our mental willingness, our thoughts of freedom, to break down our strength of the individual and to render us helpless to oppose dictators of the New World Order. And you know what? Any technique that helps to break down the family unit and the family inculcated principles of religion, of honor, of patriotism, sexual behavior, it's used by the Tavistock scientists as weapons. The Freudian psychotherapy, that's all part of it. Tavistock Institute, well, they've got so much power here in this country, in the United States, that no one achieves any degree of prominence in any field unless he or she has been trained in behavioral science at Tavistock or at one of the subsidiaries thereof. And Henry Kissinger, you look at Obama, and you think his rise was meteoric. Look at Kissinger; he rose to power. His meteoric rise was pretty inexplicable. He was a German refugee. He was a student of Sir John Rawlings Rees. Dr. Peter Bourne, a Tavistock Institute psychologist, picked Jimmy Carter, for example, for President of the United States solely because Carter had undergone this a very extensive brainwashing program. And who did that? You might recall this name, Admiral Hyman Rickover at Annapolis. So, one more thing. And Joe, I'm going to turn the light on here, or hit the green light for you. There is a single common denominator. Strategy. Tavistock. You know what it is? It's the use of drugs. Just think of the infamous MK-Ultra program of the CIA. Remember that? The MK-Ultra? Unsuspecting CIA officials were given LSD. The reactions were studied. That resulted in a number of deaths, including one where I don't recall who it was now, and it's not in my notes here. A gentleman jumped out of a window. I think it was in New York City. People listening to this might recall that. But the U.S. government ultimately had to pay. Were forced to pay millions of dollars in damages to the families of victims. The culprits behind the mind-controlled MK-Ultra program, the CIA, they were never indicted. The program originated when Sandoz AG, this was a Swiss drug firm, owned by S.G. Warburg Company of London, developed LSD. And Roosevelt, well, his advisor, James Paul Warburg, the son of Paul Warburg, that's the guy who wrote the Federal Reserve Act, the nephew of Max Warburg, who had financed Hitler, set up the Institute for Policy Studies to promote the drug. The result was LSD counterculture of the 1960s, something Paul McGuire talks about. This was behind the Student Revolution. It was financed by $25 million infusion of drugs and capital by the CIA. There's more to this, but at the cornerstone here is the Tavistock Institute. Its incarnation into the Tavistock Institute and the organizations prior to, leading up to, and developing into the Tavistock Institute. Folks, it's extremely important to understand. In the U.S., Flow Laboratories, Merle Thomas Corporation, Walden Research, Planning Research Corporation, Brookings Institute, Hudson Institute, National Training Laboratories, University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of Finance and Commerce, Institute for Social Research, Institute for the Future, and I could go on, but you get the drift, right? You get the drift. And there's even subsidiaries of, like MIT, for example. You've got, and then you've got clients of MIT, such as NASA and TRW, the U.S. Army, Department of State, Navy, Treasury. Heck, even got VW, Volkswagen in there, So, and then you got clients, for example, of RAND, which include U.S. Air Force and such, and Chase Manhattan Bank, IBM. So all of this is one large octopus of power. And the Tavistock Institute, a good source on this, and this is something that you can read for yourself. And I've got this book, Dr. John Coleman. He talks about this and the Committee of 300, Conspirators' Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300. He has really put together an excellent expose. I think Dr. Coleman does have a website. He's elderly, he's up in years. I'm not sure if he does any more speaking, but I've got the Committee of 300, the Conspirators' Hierarchy, the 4th edition. It's been revised and updated. It's a tremendous resource. It's not a light read, but it's an easy read, and it's a comprehensive one at that. So that's kind of not required reading, but recommended reading here. And that's, again, Dr. John Coleman, the Committee of 300, gets into this very well. But the Tavistock Institute, please, folks, keep that in mind and understand the Nazi connection. The Nazi connection is something we're going to have to develop into because that is such a great,
the Nazi aspect of this is something that's going to need its own show, at least its own show.
Maybe two.
Its own show to show the progression from the end of World War II and the exodus of Nazis from Germany to the South American, Italian, other Southern European, even to American shores, how they have and were allowed into this country, how they were led into this country, how they were basically brought here secretly under government programs, under a whole plethora of different excuses, reasons, identities, and the good and bad contributions they made. When I say good contributions, I mean there were benefits in the medical field, such as open heart surgery and the technology pertaining to certain other life-saving surgeries and medical procedures, but their agenda did not stop, meaning their conquest for world domination did not end as Germany failed in World War II.
Joe, when you used to talk about this, and I used to get very upset. I mean, my father fought in World War II, and I just could never wrap my mind around the fact that our government or elements within our government would do this, would bring these war criminals into the United States. The very people that are my uncle, D-Day was shot in the lung, hung from a tree for a while, did survive, passed away in 1976, buried in Arlington. I remember going to his funeral, but to think of the wars.
Like Henry Kissinger said. military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy. These people like Brzezinski and Kissinger and the Warburgs didn't care about the individual Americans and their families and the sacrifices those people made to ensure freedom, ensure the American way of life prevailed in this country. They cared, as David Rockefeller writes in his own memoirs. He says, some people accuse us of being part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the American people, and if that is the charge, then I am guilty and proud of it. I'm paraphrasing this. I don't have the book in front of me. But that's how these people think, and that's how they have thought, and that's how they continue to think. Their agenda is a world order. Their agenda is a new world order or an old world order in a new world. It is, and we've seen it over the last several decades, and we're seeing it today in Ukraine. We have a war on all fronts, economic war, political war, and it's continuing to expand and to grow. We are reaching a tipping point here in the U.S. with the economy. We've reached a tipping point in the Middle East with the wars. The world is on the brink of disaster.
What started Ukraine? I mean, now before you answer that question, Joe, I want you to think about what we talked about for so long. It's we could say, well, we have to work backwards. Okay.
Well, the one thing that didn't start Ukraine, but we could say the Cold War was some of the inception we see in Ukraine. There was the plane crash of MH17.
But no, you go back to Syria. See, I would contend. Yeah. Okay, this is how I see it. You had the Arab Spring, and correct me if you or add anything, but I think we had in most recent history, you had the Arab Spring that was planned out far in advance. There are emails that prove. In fact, if you go to Canada Free Press and look up my articles, you can see reference to emails between the French, the British, and the Americans about starting Arab Spring years before, and then the takeover or the routing of Gaddafi out of Libya. But it was I believe it was the West against Syria to destabilize Syria, which is critical importance to Russia and to China. That really caused or was a causative factor in the row of dominoes that led to Ukraine. That's just what and folks, look, you guys are really super intelligent. So the listeners of this program, you can connect the dots here. But now what do we have in Ukraine? And I want to thank. I'm looking at my email here. I do want to thank David G. Thank you so much, sir, for sending the sit rep in Ukraine. I don't know, Joe. I think it's in the studio email. But Russian TV had just shown footage of this crater left by the explosion. It's just, if you look at this crater, it looks to be about 30 feet deep. Yeah. Well, it's no. It's it's the vineyard of this Saker. It's in the studio email, I believe. Let me say this.
Oh, in the email. Okay.
Yeah. Go to the studio email.
I do have a story that's kind of off topic,
but just 1 second. 30 feet deep is a crater, and it's located on the territory of a chemical factory. So, but it didn't hit any of the main buildings. So, whether there was any building at the actual crater location, it's hard to tell. The earth is black, and the trees, all of the trees are scorched, and there's nothing left at all. If you look at this clip from RT, which is, no, it's not from RT.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Is it from what I said?
Russian TV, but not from RT. It's on Joe. The link to it is from David G. It's in the studio.
Oh, okay, email, I got it here. Got it.
But my goodness, okay.
Okay, one,
there's not
two,
this.
How many down, or is it the top one? On the icon.
You're making me look. Hang on.
Is it where the people are walking through the?
Well, okay. You're okay. Now you're at the link.
Yeah.
Okay. Right underneath the.
Like it says 1, the explosion in Donetsk.
Right. You keep going down there. Right below the image there, the picture where it stopped midway, you can see the description of the crater. But the crater that they're walking through is just huge.
Yeah.
And it's look, there's got to be some sort of new weapon, or at least some sort of something that we it could very well be a nuclear device, or maybe not a nuclear device. I don't know. I mean,
so, yeah, there's a few emails that state it could, some of the different possibilities of things it could be, and let me see if I can find and pull up some of what the listeners had sent, because there were some pretty good, I don't want to say theories, there were some pretty good points made in the emails. But yeah, we'll have to I'll have to find those at another time, because I'm not gonna. I don't want to waste too much time.
Yeah, but this is important, folks. I mean, what's taking place here, and this is Russia's, and not to deify or not to side with Russia, but what's taking place is
they're being forced into a situation where they're going to have to act, and they're going to act, and they're going to be made to look like the bad people, as I said, the bad guys,
right?
The foes, if you will, and just like we've seen in the rest of the Middle East and the destabilization of all these other countries that our intelligence agencies are in the middle of destabilizing, yet blaming nationalists or rebels of that, against the government of that country as the reason for the destabilization, the civil conflict, and the uprising and wars. It's really our own intelligence and our own policies that have created these situations of unrest, chaos, and death and destruction. And this is what they thrive off of. They're doing this for a purpose. There is a nugget at the end of the tunnel. There is a goal at the end of the disorder. There is a system at the end of the chaos, and that's what we are going to. This is the direction we are heading in.
Going back to what we opened with, I mean, you're looking at we know the game plan, Revelation 19:19. Russ Dizdar, he talks about it, and he talks about the Satanistic infrastructure that's leading to this.
Right. Whether whether it's delusional and out of this, just completely insane as to think that you can have an existence outside of God for eternity. They're trying to make it happen, trying to prove it to be the way that it can be, when we know that it can't be. As it says in Revelation, it says when they hide in the rocks, they say, "Hide us from the face of the Lamb," who and identifying right there that they know who it is that they're hiding from, that they know who it is that is coming for them.
Right.
It's not that they don't know. If real Christians and if believers put half the amount of study and time into learning their Bibles and to learning the Word of God as these people learned, we would be in a much better place, sad to say. And I think Paul McGuire said as much, or I know some of our guests have stated that the level that the amount of energy and devotion these people put into carrying out their agenda, and you can use the homosexual agenda as a marker for this, when less than 3% of the population is homosexual, yet it encompasses 50% of the issues in a news day on any given day. Right.
How does that work?
How come the 20% or 10% of believers in this country can't turn the tides of the influence of the people, at least back towards the Bible, when we have more of the majority than most groups or ideological issues out there? It doesn't make sense unless we are under some sort of blindness or spirit of blindness or spirit of unwillingness or spirit of lacking. We are not motivated. Whatever it is, we need to get on top of our game. We need to get on our knees before the Lord, and we need to find out what it is we need to do to be and work as part of the body of Christ. If everybody's working the way they see fit to work in the body of Christ, how can it be, if we have 100,000 fingers, how's that going to create a body? We need each person to play their position or their part. We need the fingers, we need the toes, we need the heart, we need lungs, we need, a tongue, we need a brain. We are not and cannot all be one and the same. We each have our own individual calling. And until we seek the Lord, seek His face through prayer and fasting, until we find out what our individual mission is, where He wants us to be, what He wants us to do for His purposes, and we carry that out and walk that out, we will never be a body of believers.
Right.
We will be a disjointed body resembling that of an interbreeding royal lineage of babies. Not to make light of this, but to try to put it in perspective, we would be I don't know, what would you call it? A disfigured body. We can't have people playing roles that they want to play. We need people to play roles that they are destined to play, or that the Lord's will wants them to play. Just like in football, you might want to be the starting quarterback, but if you're 300 pounds, you're probably going to be off better playing the position of a lineman.
Right. Yeah, and we very good. Play the positions and play them.
And to look at it, like
too.
The Lord is our coach.
Right.
He knows where best to place us. He knows what our skills are, where our skills thrive and where we are lacking. He knows how to not only change or to further His will by utilizing and creating things inside of us we never knew that we even were able to do, such as an example would be us doing this radio show, speaking, uplifting the Lord and talking about the Lord in any perspective, whether it be current events or just to talk about the Lord. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we would never have imagined we were where we are today. But thank the Lord that His blessing and His way and His will is so that it was and is done, because we are here and we have the listeners here with us. And without us, without the listeners, the show wouldn't be anything, and without the Lord especially.
Oh, we'd be talking to ourselves, right?
Right. Well, and that's the point. Just like the show, it's a smaller example of the body of Christ. Without us playing our part as a host, without the listeners playing their part as not only listeners but the people who spread the word about the show, who support the show, who pray for us, it works as a team. We work as a team together, and we might not always agree on everything. We might not always understand everything or articulate everything we're trying to say, and you guys might not always understand everything we're trying to articulate, probably because we don't do it properly. But what we're doing because of the Lord and because of you guys, it's working. And just like it says, in the church that is written about in Acts, the people had a willing heart, and they only wanted to help each other and help those other people out there to be saved, and with no other hidden agendas or wants in their endeavor except for the Lord's will to be done. It was successful. And so will it be the case for us Christians who want nothing more than the Lord's will to be done, and for His purposes to be successful. He will use anybody and anything He can to make that happen. So you can either be on His side of it, or you can be on the other side of that.
Right.
And, this life is temporary. We live this life to determine where our eternity is spent.
Well, right, and I know we don't like the term watchman, but let's use that as an all-encompassing word. If we squander our if we don't do our job properly, if we do not, and this goes for all of us, listeners as well, because you, like it or not, you've got to play your position, and I would suggest, contend that you're watchman too. So we will be judged a lot more harshly for squandering our responsibility, whether we knowingly or unwittingly do it, or by creating or facilitate any situation that would cause anyone to stray from unity under God. And that brings me to something, Joe. It's off topic, but this was sent to me earlier, and Marianne, thank you so much. This appears on Alex Jones' website. For all of the news items that are important, okay, there are a lot of important news items, and we took some time out to go over the Satanic Foundation of things. Well, this is perhaps one of the most important news items I contend that you can look at. Now, this appears on InfoWars. This is by Michael Thalen, I believe it is. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's dated today.
Is this about the church?
Church asks followers to submit to government.
The story I was going to get into, then I said let's not get off track, but I want to hit this.
Do it.
Church asks followers to submit to government, call 911 on suspicious neighbors. A church hosting a law enforcement appreciation sermon asked its followers to pledge their allegiance to government this weekend, arguing that all state authorities throughout history have been ordained by God. This article I'm reading from is endtimeheadlines.org, says, according to an anonymous visitor of the Gold Creek Community Church in Mill Creek, Washington, who provided exclusive photos to InfoWars, attendees were ordered to submit to the state without question. They had police worship today. Last week was military worship, where they played clips of American Sniper, the source said. They were telling people basically to worship government and to worship police no matter what. No mention of police brutality, no mention of the Stingray systems grabbing our data here in the Seattle area. The church pastor, Dan Kellogg, who also reportedly a police chaplain, used Romans 13 Bible verse to justify his position, as noted by InfoWars' Paul Joseph Watson. Going over to InfoWars, I'm going to read here what Paul Joseph Watson wrote. As noted by Paul Joseph Watson, Romans 13 has long been used by authoritarian regimes to force compliance. Romans 13 has routinely been cited by tyrants throughout history in an attempt to prevent Christians from opposing their rule. Indeed, it was Hitler's favorite Bible verse. Watson wrote, religious groups such as Catholics in 1930s Germany also used the verse as an excuse not to rise up against the Nazis when they were still a minority political party. Near the end of the sermon, members of the congregation were asked to raise their right hands and to make a pledge which included a promise to call 911 on suspicious neighbors. I pledge to call 911 if I see someone suspicious in my neighborhood, the pledge stated. While working with law enforcement to create a safer community is a noble cause, the sermon made no mention of the duty of Americans to oppose and protest unconstitutional legislation or dictates. The sermon's content is eerily similar to that of a 2009 document passed out to churchgoers in Ohio that told Christians to support the President Obama due to his status as God's minister. Since 2006, the Department of Homeland Security used Romans 13 under a FEMA program to train pastors to become literal secret police. Pastors tasked with teaching their congregations to submit to every government action, including forced relocation under martial law. During the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, pastors operating under the Clergy Response Team program were used to quell dissent as police and military carried out unconstitutional gun confiscations. If you go to Infowars.com, you can find the article where it has the clips of the Clergy Response Teams called in to help governments enforce martial law, and also a clip of Chuck Baldwin on Infowars. Today, American churches are neutered. Pastor Chuck Baldwin reports part 1 of 3. Now, while I do agree that we are to obey governments that are not, I would say, we are to obey authorities, governments included, that are not calling us to do anything ungodly, the point where it does become ungodly in their mandates, ordinances, or laws, we have the duty to disobey them.
Well, duty to disobey. Yes, correct. And
if they're not, duty. If the governments are not calling us to do anything anti-God, we are to obey them.
Right.
The moment they they encroach on God's laws.
Yes,
for his followers,
right,
and would be called, or would be saying that they need to sin in order to survive, or the government would be saying the people have to sin in order to live under the government. That's when we cannot follow. Just like in Daniel, it's a great example. Daniel followed the ordinances of Darius, the king of the Medes, or Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, until the decree was written to worship the statue, or until the decree was written not to pray to any god but the governor of at the time. That's why he was thrown into the lion's den. That's why they were thrown into the fire, because the law was made against the Lord that they would not follow. And instead of going along to get along, they trusted in the Lord first, and the Lord delivered them. He didn't save them from the lion's den. He delivered them out of the lion's den. He didn't save them from being thrown in the fire. He delivered them out of the fire. And that needs to be understood, the difference. Right. It's like saying, it's not that he saved us from the concentration camps. He delivered us out of the concentration camps. It's not like we won't have to go through the trials. He will deliver us out of those trials.
All right. Well, what we need to do is we need to keep our eyes, and we need to have conversations with our pastors. If you attend a church in your area, it would be our fault collectively, individually and collectively. It would be our fault if we allowed something like this to. It would be because of our support. Frankly, we either support it tacitly or actively. In other words, we've got to say no. We're not going to do this. We're not going to allow this. You treat this the same way you would treat some. We'll say you'd have the same tolerance for or intolerance for this as you would for an Islamic prayer service. Changing direction here. Just want to address this real quick. Getting a lot of emails about this. This Drudge tweet about Obama looks like he knows something terrible. Did you see this?
Yeah, we talked about this before the show briefly.
Yeah.
And it looked concerning at first, but until there was, if we're going to start basing what we feel Obama thinks on his looks, then, we can...
You got to drag a camera in
anywhere
once
with
in a while. Okay. I'm less concerned about this.
It would be different if he said something or made some kind of a statement, vague, broad statement, claiming there was some kind of doom or problem coming.
No, the only caveat I've got about this is it's kind of out of the box thinking. All right. Are we being set up maybe to accept, and I'm just throwing this out there, this is just for mere discussion, maybe this is kind of a conditioning to accept, hey, there's something wrong with this guy. Look how thin he is. And I heard one of the late night talk show hosts, and I don't watch late night TV, the talk show hosts, they just don't do that, but I'll occasionally see clips from him saying, look how old he looks. Look how much he's aged. Well, a lot of that has to do with, you realize, when you're over the period of 8 years, if you, between 45 and 53, or we'll say 48 and 56, the aging process for a lot of guys is pretty noticeable. So, okay, but anyway, are we being conditioned, out of the box thinking, are we being conditioned maybe to accept that there's something we're not quite right with Obama? But all of this, and I'll go back to this, and mention this as kind of an exclamation point to all of this, is saying, none of this would be happening, or at least not to the extent that it is, if people would have listened initially back in 2008 and vetted this guy and identified the fact that this guy is an enemy combatant, if you will, in the White House, in the Oval Office. He's a usurper. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because we're getting a lot of emails about this, and
keep Obama in your prayers.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, we should pray.
As much as I don't agree with him and his policies and the way he does things. As hard as 2 years ago, I could never say keep Obama in your prayers. Today I can, and I understand why we need to. And it's more than just for our temporary safety and lack of racial riots in case of something happening to him, or still to not only pray for our friends but our enemies. Not that he's an enemy, but what harm would it do to pray for the leader of this nation as he is leading this nation? Maybe a change could come. I mean, we can't be judge, jury, and executioner. That's the Lord's job. We are to judge the good from the evil, but as long as there is a human involved, we are to pray for them, whether we like them or not.
Oh.
I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, take it up with the Lord, because he's the one who said it.
Lastly, it's pretty interesting. I know we touched on this earlier, but this FCC Internet FCC 322 page, right? 322 page FCC control over the Internet. Now, Joe, are you on the chat room there?
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna toss a question out to the individuals in the chat room only. All right. What sticks out? What sticks out? The first person who I don't have chat anywhere near me, so what sticks out?
With what?
With this 322-page secret plan to regulate the Internet from the White House. What among the listening public in the chat room sticks out about that? You can do it, guys and ladies.
I don't know how many people have read the 332 pages.
You don't have to read it. You don't even have to read it.
Let's see.
It's right in front of your face.
Doug, stop talking. No, I'm kidding. No, guys in the chat, if you do want to comment on, what comes to mind when you hear a 332-page document?
No. This is important.
What was the question?
President Obama's 322-page secret plan to regulate the Internet. Right away, there should be alarm bells, red flags, and fireworks going off in your mind.
Okay, here's the answers in order. I'm not sure what sticks out. That's one. Censor anything negative. Censorship. A security clearance control. 322.
There you go.
Obamacare. 322. Censorship.
322. Skull and bones.
322 indeed.
Okay. Now here is it, and congratulations, you win.
The first 322 was I think Barley Boo 7366, and I think if I remember, he answered another question in the chat. Right, we asked with no prize.
Man, he's getting a
Barley Boo, send us an email. We will send you a book.
We will.
We'll send you a Paul McGuire book. Yes, we will.
I think we might have one left. Okay.
If you don't have one and you need one, send us an email at studio@Hagmann Hagmann. We'll send you.
But you have to. Let's see. You got to put 322 in the subject line and prove your Barley Boo or whatever your name is, and I want your fingerprints and DNA and facial recognition. No, whatever. But seriously, are we not seeing? And this, as strange as this sounds, and you might think, I can't defend this anymore. I can't even say. I can't even complete that. You might think, well, we're nuts. Look, 322.
I didn't think about that.
Skull and bones. This is the imprimatur of the globalists. You know. Now, I'd be interested in. It's secret right now to us. We're not allowed to see it, but when we do, I would be looking at various parts of, what's in the middle of page 19, for example.
Remember? You mean on the censorship thing
within the book? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a message being conveyed here, as if to say, we're all on the same page. It's not by accident. I contend it's not by accident that this is 322 pages long. It's not. Just as it wasn't by accident that the initial Benghazi report was 39 pages long, or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't recall. It was a number of significance. So we're looking here. Yeah, it was 39. So 30 or 322 regulating the internet. You know that this, at least in my view, without knowing what's in it, that this is. It's got the imprimatur of the globalists. And folks, this is kind of why the Hagmann and Hagmann University of Conspiracy, Fact, and History should be important, or we're trying to make it important so you can recognize things like this, because 5 years ago, I don't know, 322, so what? But the power in numbers, the messages.
Some say it signifies Genesis 3:22, or other books of the Bible, chapter 3, verse 22. But Tim Russert's famous interviews with John Kerry and George Bush in the 2004 election, when he questioned both separately about their membership of Skull and Bones and what the number meant to them, both stating it is a secret and they are not allowed to say, to there is no secret, and
right.
You know, there wish there was. I remember John Kerry specifically with a grim, smug face saying, "I wish there was something secret." And, yeah.
Well, the Skull and Bones. This is something. This will be a standalone topic, because Yale Skull and Bones Secret Society, the Order of Skull and Bones. The story begins at Yale. 3 threads of American social history. You've got espionage, drug smuggling, and secret societies. They all wrap up into one. And Skull and Bones, the American branch of the Illuminati, that's what it is. Okay? And events, national and global, are manipulated as part of this grand Hegelian equation, thesis and antithesis, or I'll just leave it at that, yielding a New World Order synthesis. The evidence and events surrounding Skull and Bones, folks, it'll shock you. It absolutely shock you. The history behind this. We don't have time to get into it, obviously, but look at the members. And I'm going to toss one more question out to you, because this, I'll tell you what. If somebody gets this, I will make sure they get a book from Paul McGuire. Okay. Here's the question. Here's the question. It has to do with what we talked about earlier, the CIA. What was the CIA code word for the Bay of Pigs? Code Operation what? Okay, I'm going to toss this out.
Oh gosh, I know this one.
I'm going to toss this out to the chat room.
I know this one.
And we identify you. Okay. What was the CIA code word for the Bay of Pigs? And this kind of is indirectly related to the Skull and Bones, but insofar as it's got a member, I can't give any more.
Let's see. I'm waiting for answers to come in.
All right.
I don't want to taint the question with my thoughts.
George H.W. and George W. Bush were in fact members of the Skull and Bones, and we know that. George Bush.
Geronimo is one.
No.
Taburn, Sabata.
There you go.
Sabata?
Operation Sabata. Whoever said that, but the main
Barley Boo. She said it again.
Oh my word!
Barley Boo. You're going to have to get 2 books, not the same. I tell you.
Well, yeah, we'll figure something out. Send us an email at studio@hagmanhagmann.com. Good job on that one. All right, folks.
Good to have her on as a guest. Apparently, we met her in Montana, according to another person in the chat who was there.
Oh wow!
So,
well,
that's awesome.
Man, well, folks, I'll tell you what. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tomorrow night, what a fantastic show lined up. Hawk and Steve Quayle. Hawk and Steve Quayle tomorrow night. Buckle up. Make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright lock position, because we are going to hit it hard tomorrow night. thanks for listening, and God bless you. And thanks for everything you do for us, and thanks for the cards. I got some really nice email. We got some really nice mail today, and wow, just God bless you, folks. Until tomorrow, stay safe. God bless. Thanks for everything, and thanks for being part of our extended family.
Absolutely.
Good night.